Hello and welcome to Beyond Sunday Podcast. We have a parenting podcast edition with my good friend back in the studio, Dr. Tim Riley. How are you?
I'm
this
well.
Wonderful day. Great. Tim, you're a child psychologist. Why should we listen to you? What are some of your credentials? Help us out.
So I did my training at Monroe Meyer Institute at the Nebraska Medical Center in behavioral pediatrics. Was on faculty in the pediatrics department for about 5 years. Been in private practice for 25 plus years
Jeez.
at this point. So I don't know everything, but I know some things that I picked up along the way. So
And you haven't completely ruined your own children.
No, all three of them have survived so far. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your kids.
So my son, Andrew, the youngest, is also a clinical psychologist. He's on faculty at Oregon Health and Sciences University in Portland. My daughter, Kara, is a psychiatric nurse practitioner in private practice. She and I work together, at least for now. And my daughter, Nicole, the oldest, is a school psychologist at Elkhorn Public Schools.
Shoot, Jiminy Cricket.
We cover the waterfront. Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, your kids are all smarter than
Than I am. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
All right. Well done. How much of this intelligence quotient comes from you, and how much comes from your wife?
90% from my wife.
Smart.
Yeah. 10% around the edges. Yeah, from me.
And Monroe and Meyer, do they ever call it M&M? They should, right?
No. The Monroe Meyer Institute.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't just have like bowls of
MMI.
M&Ms.
Yeah.
Ugh, ugh.
Yeah.
You don't want bowls of
Yeah,
M&Ms.
it's pretty institutional, but yeah.
All righty. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm glad Tim is here. We're going to actually jump into a series. This is going to be a several-part series because we're going through your newly revised, it's not out yet, but you wrote a book, first the broccoli, then the ice cream, and you're revising it for, is this the second edition, third?
Yeah, second edition, revised and updated. Yeah.
Nice. And y'all who are listening are getting a sneak peek because this book isn't going to be out to the general public, the revised edition, till the end of summer or sometime around then, who knows. And so you can get the original copy or you can listen here at the Parenting Podcast and then grab that new copy once it's out. But I know as I've been prepping for these podcasts, I've realized a couple things. One, I'm really excited to learn. Two, holy smokes, I do a lot of things. There's a lot of things I could do better. I should say it that way. And so, reminder to y'all out there, we have a couple goals with this podcast. One, we want you to be encouraged. Two, we want you to leave us some practical tools, and I really believe that's going to happen. So, Tim, how are we going to get started here?
Well, structurally, as we go along, first of all, I want to talk about what I think people might want to consider about their own role as a parent, how to present themselves, what's actually your goal for parenting. Like any other enterprise that you launch into that's a long-term deal, a long trip, anything, it's a good idea to have some sense of where you're going before you start going there. So some of that to frame up what I think a good way to approach presenting yourself to your kids is. Then we'll talk some about principles of learning, how kids learn. That'll be, I think, surprising to some degree to some people. And at some point, we'll get down to more specifics about how to approach particular behavioral issues, how to approach discipline and motivation, just how to teach in general. So we begin by looking at the broader issues and framing up our own role as parents, and then we'll start getting into details.
All right. I think that's a good plan. If the picture of parenting is supposed to be a dad who is acting goofy and singing and being yelled at by his children to stop, is that the picture we're looking for?
I actually read some recent research that said there's some real benefit to dad jokes.
Oh,
Like really corny, stupid kind of jokes. particularly for younger kids.
Do you know how much it costs for a pirate to get piercings?
I don't, but you could maybe tell me how much were your last piercings?
A buccaneer. There you go. Well, good. Do you have a dad joke you want to throw out?
I don't. No, I'm sort of past that stage. My jokes are actually funny now.
So, wow. Ouch. All right. Well, we're going to dive into a lot of principles here. Like I said earlier, using the book, first the broccoli, then the ice cream. Broccoli personally gives me lots of gas,
Yeah.
so I might have to substitute that out for peppers or carrots or something like that. But so you write in your book about the grown-up job description. The grown-up job description. You kind of mentioned that in your little preamble there, but get us started with this grown-up job description.
Okay. Well, there are a couple of suppositions that I have going into this. I mean, one, considering the setting that we're in, that people already have an interest in a primary role of parenting, which is to transmit the faith to their kids.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm not going to talk as much about that from a content standpoint. What I'm going to talk about more is how to teach your kids.
Okay.
And leave it to parents who are best qualified to decide what to teach their kids.
Yeah.
And so the notion of that is that you start off with some intent, some purpose to what you're doing, that you're not just, freelancing along the way or trying to do things the way your parents did it. So you're thinking about what is your job as a grown-up.
Right.
I also assume that most people who come to this come loving their kids. That's sort of a presupposition, which is great. And there are tremendous advantages from the kids' standpoint to having parents who love them. One is they'll go out of the way to do things for you, they'll protect you, so on and so on. But I've also run into a lot of parents over the years who think that loving their kids is enough, that it
Right.
covers the full multitude of sins, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because I've run into parents who love their kids in exceptional ways and still have kids with tremendous problems. I've had parents who adopt kids from Eastern Europe who think that if I just love on them, they'll be fine, they'll come around. And it turns out not to be the case. Love is necessary, but probably not sufficient. Love doesn't teach you how to tie your shoes or use the toilet or finish your homework or any of the other kinds of things that you need to do to succeed in life. Those are skills.
So this is setting up the most grim T-shirt line of all time. But I've already seen it. Love does not teach you how to use the bathroom. Parenting 101. Figure it out, folks. So love is good. It's a necessity. It's a foundational thing. And great, have that. But now let's get you some tools. And what, I guess, when you say tools, are you talking like skills? Are you talking, define that for me a little bit.
Well, both. General skills in the sense of understanding how do kids learn, what's the best way to approach them, what's the best mindset, the best way to present yourself to kids so that you're intentional about what you're doing, but also specific skills, which we'll get to, sometime later, where we'll talk about particular approaches to disciplinary interactions, how to get the most teaching out of a disciplinary interaction.
Here we go. I need this.
And by the way, when I'm talking about discipline, we should get this out of the way right away. I'm not talking about punishment alone, and those two get conflated sometimes.
Okay.
Punishment is often, maybe almost always, part of a disciplinary interaction, but it doesn't have to be, and it's certainly not the most important part of a disciplinary interaction. The root word for discipline is the same as for disciple. So it's teaching. It's a student. We're trying to teach skills, and the skills we're trying to teach are those that are most valuable to the kids, not the things that make our lives easier. Sorry about that. That's not the main point of what we're doing here, but the things that will make kids' lives easier when they're adults.
Oh, so not easier now,
Not
easier when they're
necessarily.
adults.
Yeah, but in general, it tends to be true that if kids do better, everyone does better.
Okay, so we're playing the long game, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, folks, if you're a grandparent listening to this podcast is for you. Not for you, though, to be like, let me teach you, sons and daughter-in-laws or whatever, how to do this. But as you learn these things, as you listen to this, to say, hey, son, I can't believe how much I'm learning from this podcast on parenting. I wish I would have heard this when I was your age. We all benefit as we learn to do this well. There's going to also be some tools just that don't necessarily have to be parent interaction. It can also be grandparent interaction. For those of you who may not have kids, but you're around kids, this is going to be helpful. For those of you planning to have kids down the road, take some notes and get the book when it comes out.
Or if you've ever been a kid.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, any of you who have ever been a kid, we're covering most of the bases here.
Yeah, I think we got it. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier the goal of parenting. What ought your goal for parenting be? And I'm going to give some goals. You tell me if I'm hot or cold. Goal for parenting to survive.
Yeah, that's the goal for the parent. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try again. Goal for parenting to get my kids to eat all their food.
Sure.
Wow. I'm doing better than I thought I would.
Or
To go to bed on time.
sure. Yeah.
Okay. So, but is there a better way to be phrasing this?
Well,
What do you think?
I mean, I think a lot of things, but there are any number of ways you might approach that. I mean, the way that I've talked about this historically, when I do presentations, is that the main goal of parenting is to get rid of your kids. And the way you get rid of your kids is by preparing them to be successful, productive, independent adults. So that means the day they're ready to leave your house for college or their first apartment or whatever, they have the skill set that they need to be able to be successful. They're functional adults at the time of their life when they need to be functional adults.
That's spectacular. So the goal is to get rid of your kids, asterisk.
Yes.
Don't leave them at the mall. But
I've only done
set
that
them
like
up.
twice, so it's not, yeah.
Wow.
No.
That's a story for another time. My parents accidentally left my sister at a theater in Minneapolis once. It was back before cell phones, and they both drove like an hour away. They thought that she was with my aunt, and she wasn't. And so, like, multiple hours later, they came back, and she was like the most pampered kid of all time.
Yeah.
They were like giving her treats.
Well, she already
and
got to see like
t-shirts
4
and-
movies or something. Right?
It was like a live theater. So all these
okay.
actors were like fawning
She
over
was
her.
hired on a stage crew or something by the time.
Yeah,
you
it was
got
the
there.
best time of her life. She was sad to have to go home with us. So, once again, the goal is to get rid of your kids and playing the long game, remember, helping them to become productive, independent adults. You kind of, in your book, you talk about this picture of a parent, and as you explained it, you use the words walk fast and carry a clipboard. And I found it to be interesting. You said to look like you have authority. And my first thought is can that be inauthentic? If I'm just trying to look a certain way that I don't really feel, is that inauthentic? Would it be better for us to admit our faults when we don't know things? Or help me understand this.
Okay. So the idea of walk fast and carry a clipboard comes from my time as a professor of pediatrics.
Okay.
And I had students. Every year I'd get a new crop of graduate students in psychology, postdocs or interns. And one of the things that I would tell them is, here's how I want you to carry yourself around the campus. And it's summed up by walk fast and carry a clipboard. And if you go to the Med Center campus, you can go just about anywhere, maybe with the possible exception of the operating theaters. And if you're walking fast, you've got a clipboard with some important looking papers on it, your head is up, you're striding forward purposefully, people will assume you have authority.
Okay, so this is the equivalent. I've seen people, they say you can get in anywhere if you're carrying a ladder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've tested it. And they've gotten into stadiums and they've gotten into places they shouldn't be just by
Yeah,
carrying
but
a ladder.
ladders are heavy.
Yeah,
And
okay.
clipboards are not. So the point is that you want your kids to believe that you have authority, and you do. I mean, you're granted authority
Okay.
over your kids. You do have that authority. But if you expect them to hear you over all the noise in the world that they're experiencing, all the noise of their peers, all the noise of media and social media, you want to look like you have authority. You want them to listen when you have something to say. And that is important not only from the standpoint of teaching, but even more important because it's going to make your kids feel more secure in their life.
Yeah. Hey, if you didn't get a chance to listen to the previous parenting podcast with Laurel Muting from Heartland Family Services, we talked about parenting in the smartphone era. And so there are some tools there. But Tim, the average kid's probably tuning into, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours of social media on a day.
Yeah, depending on age, 8 to 12-year-olds are probably in the 2 to 4 hour range on average. By the time they get into middle teen years, it's up to 7 hours a day. And if you compare that to, think about how much time you have in one-on-one, face-to-face interactions with your children. And I'm going to guess that it's not 7 hours a day each.
Right. I have a 9, 7, and 5-year-old. And so they're largely still insulary at home. And it's still, for individually, I probably get 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
With each of them a day. And unfortunately, none of them have smartphones. They're not consuming any social media yet. But as they get older and our schedules get busier, I can only imagine my time is going to become less and the time that they have will be more. The competing voice, at least for duration, is going to crush me. So when I have my time with them, I want to be able to do it well, and I do have authority that God's given me as their parent. So I guess that does make sense. Look like you have authority.
And again, the more important element there is that kids feel most comfortable, most secure, most safe when they believe someone around them who legitimately cares about them, knows what's going on, knows what to do, and can be counted on to do it. It doesn't imply that you always actually know what's going on, but they don't need to know that. They don't need to know about every hiccup or everything that every rogue relative does, or the things that scare us about how the world operates. They've got enough to contend with on their own. They don't need to have adult worries piled on top of it.
So we don't have to explain to our kids all the tough things we're seeing on the media.
Well, ideally, they're not getting exposed to too much of that. Your family, by the way, is an anomaly. The average age where kids get smartphones now is 10.3, something like that. Okay. If you and I talked about this a little bit in a previous podcast, that don't answer questions that your kids are not asking. Right? You don't want to introduce topics to them, but if they've seen something on the news and they have a question about it, then of course you want to deal with it and explain it in the best way that you can. But by and large, my sense is that the more time we can have kids playing with cardboard boxes and outside in the grass, and the less time attached to some device, the better for everybody.
Right. You talk about being friendly, but not a friend.
Right.
Unpack that for me.
So, I don't know. I think the way I wrote about it in the book is you've probably heard people say, that you should be not be your child's friend, but you should be friendly. And so, yeah, I'll say that too. You should be friendly, but not their friend.
Okay.
So, what that means is that you interact with them in a way that you would with anybody, that you're modeling appropriate behavior, positive social interactions, all those kind of things. You're friendly, you're easy to get along with, but it's not your job to always make them feel better. It's not your job to interfere with every difficult time they have. You're not their buddy. If they need you to be their friend, then you need to figure out a way to get them out more. So they have people who are the same age with whom they can grow up together and encounter some of the same things. And if you need them as your friend, then you need to get out more.
Oh! Are you saying this to me right now?
You're
You want us to get back into
Yeah.
bluegrass, don't you?
yeah.
That's what you want. Well, I'm down for that. That's it. We're rehearsing again. Let's bring the band back together. It's been too long. But I agree. And I think that is, as parents, it's like prior to having kids, I was so cool. Like I did so much fun stuff, which isn't even that true, but I had time with friends. And then with kids, you're trading, there's like relational chips. And it is wise to not be out with friends as much as I once was. I learned that the hard way, so that I'm contributing well in my marriage with our kids. But if I am totally deprived of adult friendship, well, then I'm going to try to find that with my kids, and it's not going to be best. And similarly for my kids, I do think that kids have been at a deficit of like playing outside with other kids.
Yeah.
I feel like the neighborhood we live in is a throwback neighborhood, which I'm thrilled about currently, and I'm hopeful it remains that way. And we've gotten parent text messaging going, just encouraging each other to say how wonderful this is that our kids are outside with other kids like daily.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of reasons to be outside. Just physically being outside for anybody has positive mental health effects. But getting them out and getting them interacting with other people is huge. I mean, maybe the phrase most often repeated by my mother when I was a kid was "get out from underfoot."
Get out from underfoot.
And what she meant was get outside. Don't come back until the street lights are on, basically, And I think that was useful.
Did your mother speak in Old English? What is this? Get out from underfoot, ye Tim.
I don't know. I think I was a North Omaha thing.
Is that a giant? What is underfoot?
Get out from underfoot? I think it's a hobbit or something like that.
What?
No.
People say these things like the pot calling the kettle black, and I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Get out from under ye foot. My parents did kick us out a lot, though, as well. My mom especially. I grew up in a little house. There were 6 of us, 900 square foot house. And you didn't want to be in the house. Because we're climbing all over each other. But 2, my mom was very intentional to be like, no, you're going outside. There's been a huge shift, though. Like, we would go outside. We'd tell our mom, hey, we're going to the park. And we'd ride our bikes half a mile to the park and not think twice about it. They had no way to contact us. They didn't have us microchipped.
Yep.
And then we'd come home like hours later. And they're like, why aren't you still at the park? Like they didn't even want us home.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, for me, the marker was when the street lights come on, then you come in.
Right.
Or, if you get hungry, I guess, or, you have some serious injury. But So the notion of being friendly but not a friend is, you listen to your kids, you pay attention to what their ideas and opinions are, but it's your opinion that matters in the end. You know more than they do. Okay. You have that responsibility, accept the responsibility to it. It means you protect them, but you don't pamper them. And at least in my experience, things often lean a little bit too much in the pamper direction. We'll talk about that a little bit more going forward. That you trust them enough to let them explore some and take some risk. And obviously you're there as the controlling force in that. You know where they are, what they're doing, and so on. So I wouldn't be as comfortable letting, for example, my grandkids have the reign that I did when I was a kid, just because of the way the world is, not the way they are.
Yeah.
But they still get to go to the park on their own. They still get to ride their bikes, and that's not always possible in some neighborhoods. It means that you're willing to let your kids experience the pain of bad decisions, that you don't jump in and try to rescue them from everything. And again, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, even when it's uncomfortable for you. And that goes to the idea of how you present yourself as parent is like, no, I'm not here to rescue you I'm here to help you learn. And obviously that doesn't mean that you're not going to comfort your kid or help them when they
Right.
need actual help or actual comfort from something significant.
Right.
But, stubbing your toe is not the cause for, the entire family to stop and turn everything inside out while you find a Band-Aid. So that and maybe most importantly, making sure that your kids know that you're always going to meet their needs, but their wants are negotiable.
There you go.
And in my mind, the things kids need, the things they're entitled to, are basically a warm place to sleep, nutritious food, appropriate clothing, your absolute affection for them. That's it.
That's it.
That's the list.
Yeah, I'm going to add in guidance in a faith relationship with God,
Sure.
but that might be part of your affection. I actually was able to take this learning from you just yesterday and use it. I was outside doing some yard stuff, and my daughter is like, I'm going to climb a tree. I'm like, yeah, get that tree. So she's up at this tree, and then she's like, I can't get down. And she can get down. She's gotten down so many times. She's a great tree climber. So at first I was just
So
like,
she's still up there, or is she?
she is actually. The rain was tough last night, but she's okay.
Yeah.
No, so at first
The
I was
hail
like,
is pretty small, so yeah.
I was like, you can get down. And I walked away, but then I was like, okay, I'm not going to help her down, but I can go over and let her know, like, if she falls, I'll catch her and cheer her on, but I'm not going to help her get
Yeah.
down. So I did that. I went over by her, and I was like, there's probably like 20 different ways to get down from this tree, and most of them won't result in a broken arm. And she said, well, are you going to lift me? I said, no, I'm not going to lift you. You figure one out. And then she like almost immediately got this smile and said, let me show you my favorite way. And then she like climbed all the way back around and got down in a very safe manner.
So she's how old now?
She's 7.
She's 7, and she's
Yeah.
playing you already.
Oh God.
Yeah.
You kidding me?
It starts well before that.
It's
but
not.
yeah.
It's not hard, Tim. But for me, it was already a helpful thing of like, I'm not going to ignore her entirely, although that's okay sometimes too. I'm certainly not going to help her get down. And then she got to show like, I've got these tools, and it was something that she was proud of that I got to see, and then we both moved on to our own thing.
Yeah. So I mean, fundamentally, what you're demonstrating is, I'm gonna do what's right for you, and if this doesn't turn out 100% well, I'm willing to let you be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to make those decisions. This is the kind of parental image thing. Even if you don't understand what I'm doing, right? And that's a distinct difference from how a friend might approach something. It's all about, that sort of reciprocity of the relationship.
Big word.
Being a parent.
Big word wording. Reciprocity.
Reciprocity meaning like give and take, evenness in a relationship.
Okay,
Being a
thank
parent is not a reciprocal arrangement, right? I mean, you have give and take, but you're in charge.
Got it.
You know stuff that they don't know and that they're not going to know for a long time, and you have to be willing to engage with that, even if they don't understand it. Sometimes the only explanation is legitimately, I know more than you do, and I said to do this, and so that's what you need to do.
So in your book, you talk about how parenting is a process, not an event. Tell me more about that.
Okay. So human beings develop very slowly.
Like you talk about my maturity, or what are you talking about?
Well, in your case, yeah, that's
Might never get there.
really, really
Sorry,
slow process. But babies are really helpless, and
Right.
they're that way for a long time. We interact with the environment successfully with our brains, and physically, we're not so skilled. I mean, we're not like a giraffe or something that, is born and 30 seconds later it's up on its feet running around. We're very helpless. The process is slow. Development is slow but predictable. And so what that means is kind of what you alluded to earlier, is that, we're in it for the long run, that we don't expect magical things to happen from any particular, one teaching interaction that we're thinking about. this is my posture as a parent. I'm going to, try to have some guidelines for how I approach things, and I'm going to trust that process, even on days when it doesn't look like it's going particularly well. Because one of the other parts of human beings developing slowly is that skills develop slowly over a long period of time. And so sometimes, you think your kid's really got some idea that it's really soaked in and they've got this behavior, and then the next day their brain springs a leak and they got nothing. And you're starting over again. And so if you have this notion that everything is going to go in a nice, orderly, neat, step-by-step sequence, you want to disabuse yourself of that and just deal with what's in front of you today.
So the things that you feel like your kid has learned, when the next day it's like they learn none of that,
right.
That's normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So then if my kid has weeks of not hitting a sibling, and now all of a sudden they push their sibling down or pull their hair or whatever, it's not time to abandon ship and try a whole new routine. It's what should I do?
Yeah. You stick with what you've been doing, because if it's been weeks and they haven't hit their sister, that's a really successful period.
How about hours?
Hours is less successful,
Okay.
but still, one event in an hour, and you respond to that. And because development proceeds slowly, you deal with that behavior. You don't expect that by punishing the daylights out of them that's somehow going to correct that all in one shot. Learning doesn't happen that way. You just deal with that behavior in the way that you have, systematically, appropriately, and then go on to the next event.
So then what I'm gathering from this is I need to cut myself a little bit of slack.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the case for most parents, especially moms. I think I might cut myself too much slack at times. I know that my wife does not. She's always
She doesn't cut you slack, or she doesn't cut herself slack?
Well, you know what? I think
or both.
She's very gracious with me. She's much more gracious with me than she is with herself, legitimately. And I've seen that with a lot of moms, even more so than dads, that they really, like, the kids listen and respond and behave well in a restaurant, and it's like, success.
Yeah.
And then the kids,
until the dessert comes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the kids like belch in a restaurant, and it's like, well, I'm the worst parent of all time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So I mean, it's sometimes easy to take things personally when your kids misbehave, but think about really how they're learning, right? They don't, younger kids in particular. I mean, your kids now are, have learned to read a little bit, and they're starting to acquire information in a different way. But mostly kids learn through their experience, right? They don't have grown-up tools. They don't even have big kid tools. So the way they learn about their environment is they do some behavior and see what happens. And if it produces a good result for them, if acting up in the restaurant, gets people to pay attention to them and, get them an extra dessert, then they'll act up more.
Oh, they're going to do it. I remember when I was like probably 7th or 8th grade, and it was at Ponderosa Buffet. This was a big day for the Bay family.
Premium quality meals.
Yeah, we didn't get to go to buffets too often, and certainly not Ponderosa. It was mostly Old Country Buffet for us, if you remember that. What a place. What a place.
Yeah.
Yes. But we were at Ponderosa, and I had just seen somebody like do this like head thing. And so, like, every time the waiter, like, walked to refill our waters, I would do that. And my dad got so mad at me. And when we walked outside, I remember I was, like, in 7th or 8th grade. He actually kicked me in the rear. And it cracked me up so much. But for my mom and dad, who were pretty consistent, they could never predict what I was going to do. And so I tried to tell my wife this, like, our kids have at least half of mine in them. And so they're unpredictable. We think they've learned something. Now they don't get it. And also we're adults. Like, we've experienced all this. I got my butt kicked in a Ponderosa parking lot. And I've learned from that a little bit.
Yeah, so your daughter's up in the tree.
Yes.
And one thing that she learned is, well, whining about not being able to get down is a good way to get dad to engage with me.
Dang it.
And we'll talk about.
I got that one right.
Well, I think you did in the end. We'll talk about the importance of attention here in a little bit. But if you had responded by saying, "Well, I'll help you down, I'll whatever," then you would have taught her not only this is a good way to get dad to engage, but I can manipulate dad into doing things for me I'm capable of doing for myself, which is exactly the wrong message. So in the end, you said, no, you know how to do it. You get down and I'll watch. And she's probably not going to ask you that again, right? She's got it, right? Because she made her play and it didn't work out. So the way that I think about this most in terms of process but not event is to say you can't walk your dog all at once.
Yep, another.
You got to walk your dog a
Go
little bit
outside a foot or
every day. And so you teach what you can
I get
teach
it.
out of given interaction, and then you go on to the next interaction. And those interactions accumulate over time. But occasionally a kid will go back to some behavior that you haven't seen for a long time and just try it out again and see if it will create some positive effect for them. So if I whack my sister, do I get control over my sister? Do I create a lot of attention but no real consequences for myself? I'm managing my environment in a little way.
So, the last thing I want to talk about today is you call it in the book the Grown Ups Club.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. Where do I sign up? I want to be part of the Grown Ups
You're
Club.
already enrolled.
I'm enrolled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether you want to be or not.
Oh, well.
And
Not as
so
prestigious as I thought, Tim.
I mean, you probably noticed over time in your brief but enormously successful life so far
Thank you so much.
that the space between adults and kids has narrowed quite a bit.
Yes.
That the line between adulthood and childhood has blurred. It used to be that there was adult literature. We would read grown-up kinds of stuff. We'd read F. Scott Fitzgerald, and they were reading Curious George or whatever. But now it's like everybody watches the same shows on television. Everybody binge watches the same things. We're all talking about the same things. There's not as much space between those as there used to be, and a lot of what's portrayed in media in terms of adults is not very flattering and not very helpful. So, if you watch programs, you see that adults are very often presented as kind of helpless, incompetent,
bumbling.
or selfish. Right. Self-centered, or reality TV is all about image and no substance, and like any kind of behavior is okay as long as you're doing it in an exotic locale and you're, dressed in designer clothes, all of those kind of things. So kids see those models of what adults are like, and they will tend to overgeneralize that that's what all adults are like.
Okay.
Right? And so it's important for us to establish ourselves as different kinds of adults, to counter those things, to not only demonstrate a different model for them, but also to model for them how they should respond to other adults.
Okay.
Right? So the way that they see other adults behave reflects on us, because from their perspective, you're all part of the same club. You're a grown-up, and they're grown-ups. And so they'll generalize across those settings and treat people similarly. So it's up to us as parents to help them distinguish that thing and to recognize that there's more breadth to that. There's more than one way to think about a grown-up. And a big part of that is how we model interacting with other grown-ups.
Okay.
So that means you're totally free to disagree with somebody's ideas or whatever, but not assault their character,
right,
or their humanity, or whatever. That you demonstrate that behavior, and then you expect that behavior from other kids. So you expect them to observe and to listen to appropriate adult authority. So you listen to the bus driver, you listen to your teacher, you listen to your parents, you listen to your friends' parents, you listen to the police officer, you listen to anybody who is legitimately in authority.
Right.
which presupposes then that you know that those people are safe.
Right.
But if you allow them to not respect other adults, then you're inviting them to not respect you.
So now in our culture, though, currently, because I grew up with that, where it was like, if I came home and was like, let's see, what was my first grade? Or one of my teachers like, Mrs. Eichstead punished me again today, which was and I never told my parents this actually.
Yeah.
But if I did, if they found out, I got in trouble, and then I would like try to like finagle my way out of it. My parents always took the side of the teacher.
Yep.
That has really changed. Helicopter to bulldozer parents. Yep. Also, though, it's like it's also changed to be like you should listen to your kids. If they say that someone did something to them, you got to listen to them. But so you're not saying ignore that.
Yeah, no, and that's the qualifier here is that you know the adults with whom your child is interacting. And then also you make it clear to your kids that not every adult should be trusted automatically.
Okay.
That if they ever have the least bit of concern about something an adult says to them, then they'll come to you with it. And that goes back to, well, if they see you as a trusted, powerful, grown up, walk fast and carry clipboard kind of adult, as they see you as somebody who can resolve problems for them, then they'll bring you those things. The other thing is you make it absolutely clear to your kids that there is never, ever, under any circumstances, a time when it's okay for an adult to ask them to keep a secret from you.
That's good. Right. And what I'm also hearing from you is I'm going to have to get out of my phone more often and actually get to know the adults that my kids are interacting with. So that's a good lesson for us. And as adults, I know we've like tried to get further and further away from other people interaction at times. Like I'm going to order my groceries online, sit in my vehicle. They're going to bring it out to me. I'm going to try not even to make eye contact. They can put it in my trunk type thing. But when it comes to the people my kids are interacting with, I need to get to know those people. And so not that my kid, not that they have to trust and do what any adult has told them, but they do need to respect them.
Yeah, yeah, and again, disagree with ideas, disagree with statements, disagree with anything, but you don't assault people's character.
So that's if I'm getting an altercation at a soccer game or whatever, and that I can
see that.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, yeah. It's okay for my kids to see me disagree with someone, but I'm still going to be kind.
Right.
I'm going to do it in a way that I would want them to do it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Be respectful. Yeah.
Then when I'm at home and I'm away from that person, that I'm not going to talk negatively about that person in front of my kids and be like, "Oh, that guy's such a jerk. I can't believe."
Yeah, and that's particularly true in families who are separated or divorced.
Sure.
There's often a tendency for one parent to run down the other parent,
sure.
Right? And and again, that's a topic we'll talk about in some detail later on. But that's especially egregious. I mean, that's really, really bad. I mean, if you do that, if you denigrate the authority of another adult, since you are members of the same club, in the process, you diminish your own authority. If I don't have to listen to that adult, then I don't have to listen to this adult. I don't have to listen to you, right? So you never automatically dismiss what somebody says without good reason, but by the same token, you're always willing to listen to what your kid says. And if you've spent time developing, I'm sure you have, your own ideas, you've made it clear to them how you think about things, you've made it clear that you're willing to talk to them about anything at any time, whatever, then they will bring those things to you. And if they have questions, then you help them learn how to navigate through those questions.
Yeah.
Rather than dismissing other people out of hand.
Yeah. Tim, I love these conversations. This has been an awesome first edition of one of many conversations we're going to have going through some of the principles from your book, First the Broccoli, then the Ice Cream. A couple things I learned today. There's a phrase, something about like, go underfoot. What was
Get
it?
Out from underfoot.
Get out from ye underfoot, ye little Tim. Why did your parents go from Old English to pirate? I don't know. Your mom's a pirate now.
After my mom lost her eye and got the patch. Then
She did not.
She did not.
Oh, shoot. All right. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in. And it is my hope and my prayer that you take these things you have learned, jot down some notes, and try to change one thing today. One thing. If there is one thing for them to target, each person is going to be thinking of this differently. But from today's, what's one main takeaway that you would say?
Be intentional, right? Everybody that I know is busy. Right, you got 18 things on your calendar. You've got 4 sporting events and 2 dance lessons, whatever, to take your kids to. You're grabbing food in a box somewhere and bringing it home and changing clothes on the way to the next event or whatever. It's really easy to fall victim to just that pace of life and lose track of being intentional about your interactions. And then you end up basically handing influence over to social media and other kinds of things that are going to have more impact on your kids because they don't have to deal with the minutia of life. They just get to tell your kids what they want to tell them. So that might be the even bigger point of intentionality is just pay attention to what's going on from a media standpoint. I mean, the way I think about it is handing over your kid to a cell phone or an iPad or whatever, and then having them disappear for a couple of hours is like saying, I would like you to invite a stranger into your home to spend a couple of hours with your kid in their bedroom with basically no supervision from you.
Yeah, creepy.
I don't know any parents who would sign up for that, but in effect, that's what's happening when you hand over control to those influences, and those are not people by and large who have a positive interest in your kids. They don't want to do things for your kids. They want things from your kids.
Ugh. Well, thanks for that image. That's a great positive note to end on, Dr. Tim. But seriously, y'all, God has given you authority to parent well your kid. And I'm excited to learn with you. Thank you for being on today. And let's parent better with God at the lead, intentionally, and let's keep learning. Have a great day.